Hi, good afternoon. My name's Kenny Holroyd. I'm the Senior Sales Director here at Eventbank. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for our online forum on how associations can provide value to members on the road to recovery. A brief introduction, Eventbank, global company based out of the States in Virginia with a huge presence here across APAC. We're an all-in-one event management and membership management software as a service platform that has a mix of large corporates globally that we're supporting to help automate their events and membership programs, and also the associations and non-profits across the region. As we're more than aware, the COVID-19 situation has had a huge impact on the association community. And as a result of this, the future landscape is bound to transform. These are certainly difficult times that we know that we're living in right now. And none of us, unfortunately, could have foreseen any of these circumstances that have been brought to us by the COVID-19 pandemic. Member-based organizations everywhere are wrestling with the question on how do we provide value to members on the road to recovery. While there is so much uncertainty right now, there's also a lot of opportunity. However, there is another side coming, which is the recovery. What you do over the next few months to position yourself and your association could make a huge difference. Today, we're going to hear from Asia Pacific's top association leaders as they discuss how to provide value to your members on the road to recovery. We've been listening here at Eventbank to our clients in terms of the challenges that they're facing across the region. And over the next month, we're going to be implementing some new features that are going to help our communities support their membership organizations. And we'll talk a little bit about that shortly. So before I introduce our esteemed panelists this afternoon, I would just like to remind everyone that's currently listening in on the webinar to feel free to ask any questions during the discussion. You'll find a Q&A chat box embedded within the link, and we'll address any of the questions as we go through the panel. So let's meet today's panelists. Firstly, I would like to introduce Marcel Hughes, who's the Director for Associations and Marketing of MCI Group. Marcel has over 20 years experience within the industry, and he is the Division Head of Association Management and Marketing and Key Account Management at MCI Group here in Singapore. Next up, I'd like to introduce Antonio Cadaci, who is the Regional Business Director at APAC for PCMA. He's the former CEO and founder of La Lila School, which is the first privately owned Spanish institution in Southeast Asia. He has huge experience with high-profile SMEs and MNCs and educational institutions across the region. So please welcome Antonio. Next up, we have Charlie Besanoia, who is the chairman at the Philippine Council of Associations and Associations Executive, or the PCAA. He's a well-known procurement and supply chain management icon in Asia, and is also procurement for the TransProcure, which is a leading global procurement supply chain solution and services company, where he has over 18 years experience. So please welcome Charlie. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Datuk, who is the president at Malaysia Society of the Associations in Malaysia. She brings a lifetime of experience in the health and well-being of women, children, and families, and has been the prime mover of many policies and programs that are in place today in a career spanning over 4 decades. Please welcome Dr. Datuk. And then finally, I'd like to introduce our CEO at Eventbank, Eric Schmidt, who is going to be leading today's panel. Eric, over to you.
Thanks, Kenny. And welcome everybody to this webinar for Asia Pacific. And, we have a great panel today. And so hopefully you guys are going to get some value out of what we're about to discuss. Everybody over the last, depending on where you sit, could be 9 weeks if you're from mainland China, dealing with the implications of the virus and therefore all the things that have come with it. Different organizations have dealt with this situation in different ways. Obviously, the biggest impact has certainly been to people's events up until now. And, today's discussion is really to help everybody think about their strategies, think about their finances, and also think about the way forward for the association and Chamber of Commerce industry. Everybody has different organizational issues that are unique, but at the same time, there are strategies and concepts and certainly ideas that we hope to share in the panel today. So to kick it off, I'd like to give it over to Antonio, just to give a quick update on what you're seeing in the events industry. Certainly, you guys are in the center of that and trying to help the organizations that are part of your membership to be able to deal with the cancellations, the refunds, and certainly the governments that are trying to help certain parts of that industry. Antonio?
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and thank you, Eventbank, for the invitation. A pleasure saying hello from my Singapore home to everybody connected today in this online forum. To be honest, Eric and all, you don't need to be a very smart nowadays to identify that the industry is in serious trouble. But that is hopefully the only time that you will sense perhaps some negativity during my conversation today. The way PCMA has been listening to our members, stakeholders, is very special. We've been engaging with our volunteer senior leaders across regions, not only North America, but as well as EMEA and of course Asia Pac, involving them, listening to what is their advice, listening to what are the challenges that they are facing, regardless which pillar of the industry are in. Latest data that reaches our hands, in particular in Singapore, it was above 90% of, 90 to 95% of any sort of event being canceled. I mean, as you might have heard, Singapore started yesterday on a circuit breaker. So pretty much, besides the 10 essential services that the government or industry that the government has identified, we are pretty much locked down at home. So say that is that what is next, what is ahead, where are the opportunities? I do have a personal view. I think the industry, this is not a wake-up call, but definitely the most serious call that the industry have had since most probably the creation of the industry, meaning business models need to be relooked, reassessed, the way we engage. We might not come back to where we were before, and that is something that everybody should start understanding the meaning of that. What is coming next? I think nobody knows at this stage. The situation is not only fluid, I say personally that is very liquid. So I think it's very important that we as global associations, we lead that step forward of, number one, we need to be the advocates. We need to be the ones knocking on government doors when possible and look for their support. I'm not gonna go into the specific example of how the Singapore government has put not one, but two, but three budgets in particular to support not only the business events industry, but across the country. But I have to say that perhaps the scenario we are facing is maybe the only time where you can see that everybody in the region of Asia Pacific is going through the same. We always talk, when we talk about Asia Pacific, how diverse, how agile, how fast moving the industry is. But what we are all facing, despite some exceptions, we are all going through the same. And it is very clear that our industry will be, if not the last, one of the last to go back, or rather to go back to move into the new ecosystem. I personally believe that there is nothing again as going back to normal. Normal is not going to come back at all. This is an amazing opportunity for all of us to engage differently with our audience. And we can talk during today. Is a member base or non-member base? How we can support? Is it from the government? Is it from the education perspective, like PCMA is doing, readjusting the needs? In every single session we are conducting, we are polling, we are asking our audience, what do they need, how we can help them, and acting very, very fast in order to develop new products so we can help them doing this transition. So I would say advocacy in terms of government, provide content and education that is required, and how, of course, you can differentiate from your competitors. We have gone from an overwhelming industry of face-to-face events to an overwhelmed industry of digital events. And the way we differentiate, it should be through content, through experience. That is the way we believe in these 3 points. And we can talk about more on how we are adding value. But of course, nothing is happening. There is no events, associations that they rely on a single event per year. That event is gone, how they're going to survive. A lot of questions nowadays, but definitely looking forward on how we show the empathy, engage with the conversations. This is a time for all of us to get together virtually for sure and engage into close conversations and provide support for sure.
Yeah, Charlie, obviously, you know, as the leading body in the Philippines, how have you seen the Philippines government, you know, sort of taking shape around this challenge for, you know, the industry associations there?
basically, the government is very much burdened with a lot of things. Associations can only do so much, and I basically on all of the points that Antonio have actually already shared. So most of these associations are not doing anything. They're incapacitated already. The focus really now is on health and on the food supply chain, just trying to keep up with things. So only relevant associations will tend to actually act and move. Supply chain is very important now for each and every country. I also, as I represent also the supply chain profession and the supply chain industry, we have to practice our own supply chain in our own association, isn't it? The demands and the behavior are actually changing from our members. They're starting to see our relevance or our non-relevance, you know, especially during this pandemic crisis. What have we seen? There's a strong pressure now for associations to just be able to motivate their employees inside the association, simply because the cash flow is almost gone already. The hardship didn't start only 3 weeks ago. The hardship already started since January. So they've pretty much burned a lot of cash flow already, and there's no revenue coming into the associations. To keep these employees of associations is a big challenge. For us in PASIA, we have actually gathered the motivation and the enthusiasm of people to actually go come and volunteer and to prioritize the remaining cash flow to food, health, you know, needs of the employees of the association. But one of the things that I really see is like we need to continuously provide value proposition to the members. And how do we actually get to see that? We need to address and have a crisis management team. We need to have a communications plan. And we really need to shift immediately all of our efforts towards online and digitalization, because this thing is not going to change anymore. You know, the usual face-to-face seem to have already gone out. And if ever it comes back, it's not going to come back in the spirit of 6 to 12 months. So what do we need to do? We need to sort of like get the association employees motivated to keep up. Because if we don't have this, we would not be able to be on the road to recovery, because there's no more in the association who could really keep up and provide their services to the association members. That's it for now.
Absolutely. Marcel, obviously, you know, in the role that MCI plays in working with your clients in the association world, as you look back over the last 4 weeks, what is that exercise that you guys have gone through in trying to identify the strategy, the immediate short-term strategy for these organizations? Is it about cutting costs? Is it about, you know, trying to make sure that the members are taken care of? What's first in mind, and what are you guys recommending to your clients to handle immediately?
I think that we are association managers, so we are a business that manages associations, and therefore we have slightly different point of view on many things. We operate it like a business, and that's the underlying factor. So the first thing that happens in a crisis, and we've had a few, I mean, the good thing about, say, living in Asia is that we've had SARS, we've had the economic crisis, we had 1997 financial crisis. So we've gone a long way. I've lived in Thailand, so I had a few extra on my list, a few coup d'etats here and there, etc. So at the end of the day, you know, you're looking at resilience. The only thing that is different today is that unlike other events that have happened, you knew when the recovery would be in place. And now we basically realize that the recovery is bound with uncertainty. That's the only certain thing we know, is that we don't know what's coming next. And that needs to be taken as part of any strategy. So at this moment, the first rule is, and you heard Charlie mentioning it, cash is king. You need to reorganize your organization and restructure it as fast as you can to survive, because many associations will run out of money if they're too slow in reacting and adjusting to the new world. They will die. They will go bankrupt. That's just the hard reality of the industry. Now, on the other hand, there's also great opportunities. So we have a variety of clients, reading from medical to pharmaceutical to finance industry, etc. And we do see that some of our industries are actually picking up business. So particularly in the certification industry, the online education, those are really doing very, very well. We realize that people have the time to pick up education. Now that they're working from home, I'm going to fix my CPD in the next 3 months, so I'm done with it for a year. etc. So there are success stories. Now, the underlying part is how to move forward. And that basically means that whatever business formula you had in terms of raising your revenue, throw it out of the window and start over again. And what that formula is, there is no magic wand for that, but it's each and every industry will have to rediscover it and develop it on their own.
And as you guys, look at that, many associations in Asia are, so reliant on that one event per year to drive revenue. If you look at India, the lifetime membership model, which only brings in cash once, doesn't have a reoccurring flow, is obviously going to hit Indian associations pretty hard if they can't drive revenue through events. How are you working with those boards to figure out really what is that next move and what are they going to do to react to this new environment?
I think you're asking me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the hardest part is to work with an independent board. Very often board are volunteer boards. So they're not used to managing it like a business. And it depends how your arrangement is. Some of our clients are very well advanced and they're willing to move forward very quickly and realize that, but you have to take, as an advisor and consultant to our clients, you have to show a roadmap. You have to show, if you do this, there's your ending, and our relationship is going to end in the next 6 months, whether you want it or not. But if you move, these are your options, etc. So you have to act as a consultant. It is a lot of painful discussions. There have been, and I've heard even within MCI, there have been some very hard discussions on what to do. Should the event go virtual? There's a lot of emotional decision-making being done by associations. Well, we've done it like this for many, many years. We will survive this too. It's deal with it. At the end of the day, you have to take a step back and look at it on an accounting point of view and then on a business development point of view.
I wanna add something, if you allow me, Eric, to that point of Marcel, which I think it's very key. What he just mentioned is that planning, is that visualization, and we are not asking or we are not going through that 3-5 years plan for now. It's like, okay, how do you see your rest of 2020? How do you want to be from here until the end? Perhaps 2022. Do the backwards or the walking backwards. Put every single measure in place so you can adjust on the short term if the direction that you are going is the one that is going to take you to the objective. This is something that we all should be doing. We are doing this because, as Marcel say, if there is something that we know, is that we don't know what is next. How does it look? Because there is no kind of like deadline in terms of, okay, by the end of Q3, this is going to be solved. Or the statement that I don't really like at all, which is the go back to normal. Another point is referring exclusively to our industry is, okay, so once the clear out comes from perhaps World Health Organization, people are not going to jump into the airports and start traveling. And we all know this. So this is something that, for as much as we are saying short term and so on, I think we should enlarge the vision into a mid long term, because it's definitely, as I say, a wake up call, a call of attention to really look at the model and how to evolve. It is very clear, the booming on the virtual meetings and the amazing opportunities that are ahead, but technology platforms and so on is pretty much, they, for as much as they play a key role, they are just, this is just the enabler. Yeah. So we need to have that strategy in terms of content and designing the virtual events. These are conversations that I'm not shy sharing that we are having within our own organization, how we can go through that transition. And we are putting already solutions into the market, which goes in line with what Marcel mentioned, which is true. People is at home in front of the screen. Now I have time to do my CMP or my my digital event strategy, and so on. So that's definitely some very good opportunities. The challenge that as event organizers, I believe we are sharing is, how do we monetize our online communities? How do we, we talk about empathy. We are all doing webinars. Majority, we are not charging for that. What is the business model that will bring the revenue, but at the same time, how we can have that empathetic conversation?
On that particular point, let's hold that thought, because we're going to exactly dive into that. But I want to go to our first poll, which is, how well is everybody prepared for the next 12 months? So you should see a poll on your screen now. And just go ahead and we'll give everybody a few seconds here to take part in the poll. Great. So I don't know if it's come up on everybody's screen, but the overwhelming majority of people are saying that they are working on it. So that seems to be a work in progress. So I want to go back to the point that both of you guys made, and I'm going to start with Charlie on this question to bring his thoughts in here. As people are looking at revenue models, events were a heavy driver of revenue to associations in Asia. Memberships was only a small piece of what they do in terms of the overall percentage of revenue. Which is very different from what we have here in the United States, which is 50% of association revenue is from memberships. Because people are delivering a membership experience, people are thinking about the membership model as their main driver, and events are ancillary to that with some other revenue that comes in. So as you look at the situation, Charlie, how are you thinking and advising your own organizations, but also organizations that you work with in the Philippines, to think about new revenue models, and that distinction between, okay, we're taking an offline event and we want to put it online, and is there a revenue model associated with that?
Very good question. Actually, as a supply chain leader in the industry, I always advise associations to always drive value of their associations by following the playbook of what is actually to be in supply chain management. Because even associations, as I said, have their own supply chain. You have demand and you actually have supply, and you have to actually make sure that you have a value propositions to balance this. First thing is, associations should actually have what they call supply chain planning. They have to look at the demand side of the business. They have to sense out if memberships are not working, what can actually work, and they have to create new product to actually bring to the table. And we're doing it right now. But then the next stage would be source. How do you actually get all of the ingredients and the components to actually create that new value? So we have to work now with several technology players. We need to talk now to several service providers that's going to complement the product that we're trying to evolve. The third is actually we need to move and to make sure that we actually operationalize it so that customers, members could actually come back and pay to the value that we expect them to be actually paying. But one thing that I actually see coming here is like, things like certification is going to go higher and higher. Things about virtual learnings are going to get higher and higher. But you actually have to also take a look that if you're operating on a regional basis, you're now competing not only with your region or with your country. You're now competing on the global landscape. And there are really good players on this particular area, which associations are not well positioned to compete with. This could be commercial event organizers. This could be, real professionals who does this for a living. So it could be a case that you can become irrelevant. So what do you do with it? You need to up the ante, because the competition that you're facing is a very different kind of competition. You're not competing with the guy next door in your country in terms of events. You're now competing on a global sphere of things. So you always need to plan, you need to source appropriately and do more partnering with your service providers or your partners, suppliers. And you actually have to enable yourself to be able to move the service that you want to put into the market. There's going to be fallouts, and you have to watch out if you're one of them, and so that you can actually shift your strategy to where you want to actually play your association going forward.
Marcel, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Charlie hit something very important, is that there is so many new dynamics in there that even if you are a conference organizer as an association or working for an association, the moment you go onto the web, you deliver something, but your competition is not the other organizers. The competition, the future competition could be the tech companies themselves. There is a whole different expertise. We don't know yet in what frame we compete in. Just because we know how to organize events doesn't mean that we know how to organize webinars and that live experience or that online experience. That's one thing. The second problem we have in Asia is that the perception, the value of online education has always been very low. Nobody's been really willing to pay for online education, and we haven't invested in that. So it's going to be very difficult to get that through. One thing that's really important, I'd say as a takeaway, is that if you work with your industry players, your sponsors in the industry, you realize that there is a profound interest in per se. They are willing to invest in these new technologies because they have a direct investment in the industry itself, in the association and whatever it represents, and therefore they become your new drivers. It's not the key opinion leaders that provides the content. It's going to be, for the time being, it's going to be those who can invest as funders, as founding fathers for the new method of moving forward.
So have you seen a shift in that sponsorship dollars sponsoring webinars and trying to move money that way, or do you don't think the industry has moved there yet?
I think that there are two kinds of conversation happening now. Those that are going ahead already and have that discussion, and those are saying, wait a minute, I'm holding $200,000 worth of sponsorship from an event of this year. How can I convert that? And that's the wrong discussion. So people are not there in a mindset. It is the question, look, this is what we're doing. This is why we need you. This is the short-term and the mid-term and the long-term planning. And you need to be a stakeholder in that, and you will be rewarded if you're a player now.
Antonio, on that point, again, this goes to a little bit about what you were saying in terms of making a decision to take an offline event and make it a webinar, an online conference, an online experience. How do you think about the business models for these organizations in this new environment in the online world?
So something we are considering and thinking as we speak is definitely the pivot to virtual is the easy option right now. That is very clear, from the face-to-face, as we say, going into virtual. However, this should not be an ad hoc solution. I believe that is going to be a norm, that before there were already webinars, but they didn't have, I will say, the consistency or the relevance, and perhaps the webinar organizers, we were failing at the message of how those webinars before were presented. Nowadays, because it's one of perhaps the main platform we have to connect with our audience, we are putting more emphasis. For us, the evolution of the business model should go something that perhaps through a period of time, you can find regular touch points with the industry. Meaning, today, we are in this online forum with you guys, which happy to be here. What is next? What is the plan? What is the journey that we have as event organizer on the follow-up with the almost 100 plus attendees we have today? Is there a following touch point? Is it something that is going to go into a reduced group? Can we create this event experience richer? What is the learning outcome? Are we spinning around education? Is this something about creating the community? What is the real value? Because as you create that value is where we believe the business model can change and evolve. And when there, perhaps we could start considering a small charging fee or making sure that we share these solutions with our partners in the industry. We already have partners in the industry that are fully committed because digital education is part of their journey, and they have shown their interest, and they are supporting us across the region and a global level. But it's more on how can we spark this mindset. That is one thing or one challenge that I see. The second one is from the content and delivery perspective. You have all these professionals of the industry that are so used to meet face-to-face that now they need to do digital. Also, you have all these set of speakers, facilitators, that they are so used to do the face-to-face events. How do we help them? How we will educate them? How we support them so they become an outstanding virtual facilitator? Not everybody that delivers not everyone that delivers face-to-face is a great digital facilitator. And that is another, perhaps, a way of looking at the business model. Is there a business opportunity there in terms of training and education? Of course, I will always go back to at the core of what PCMA does, which is, of course, all our education and value to our members.
Absolutely, and on that same point, that's where we as Eventbank, as a technology platform, have really had to spend the last month rethinking our product roadmap, because people want that experience that's not in person. Is how do we take that experience and really move it into an online experience? And obviously at the beginning we showed our preview of our online community that will be launching in early May. For both members and events, but really is to dovetail and make sure that experience comes digital, so that there is a long-lasting element to that. And it is an ongoing thing for every organization that's making that transition. And certainly, nonetheless, it is obviously in the world that we're living in and moving forward. Whether we like it or not, the mobile phone and certainly the digital communities and the digital experience on events is going to transform the way people are interacting. People do want the social element of that, but hopefully we will get to obviously have an online and offline experience that's much more integrated moving forward.
Eric, and in line of what Marcel mentioned before, is definitely the time to look at your talent. What is the talent that you have within your organization? Do you have the right talent for the right jobs? Because definitely what's coming next, which nobody knows it, requires definitely new roles. And the old ones, the so-called old ones, we need to be redefined. What about, the convention centers, agency, association, CBBs, and so on? That's sort of like an old classic role. It might need an evolution. So definitely a perfect time right now to do that talent assessment.
Yeah, and just to answer that's really this talent is what it's all about, and it depends how quickly you can shift into this new direction. To give you an example of success story here. We have a client that we normally do their events for, and we had a discussion with them, and they said, okay, go ahead, let's go digital. And within 6 days, we produced an online event for 1.5 hours instead of 2 days, and with 8,000 participants. And now that's a whole series. But we do have to reinvent. So you have to be very, very quickly, and you do have to reinvent. I love what my colleague once shared with me, which is basically, people have a current attention span of 9 seconds. 8 seconds, and a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. So knowing this, we have to really change the dynamics of what we do, just staring at a screen. We have to be able to program it like watching a TV show in order to get 100% engagement out of the time that you participate. And do not think that you can go with an 8-hour seminar and get people to take anything home.
Absolutely right. And actually that transitions us to a question that we have, which goes in line with sort of the other element, of the association discussion, which is on memberships. So the question that we have is what do you think if an organization offers free memberships to their members in this COVID-19 situation, what impact do we need to consider? Who wants to dive into that first? Marcel? Free memberships, good idea, bad idea, or is there something that's actually better?
Okay. For most of us in Asia, memberships is not a big part of our revenue. So giving it away is a way of taking opportunity and growing that. It's also in reaching out, helping your membership, saying, okay, as an association, we understand some of the hardship and we can do that. So some of my clients have said, okay, there won't be any late fees. Some other clients have said, okay, 6 months is free this year. So they're extending the pain. I did read this question earlier, and I say, the impact is use it to your advantage. If you do this, don't do it to help your membership, do it to grow your membership. And therefore, if you cannot invest at the same time in growing your membership, it might just burn your cash, which you don't need at this moment. Charlie?
Okay. Well,
Go ahead,
every time you give free membership, it costs you something. But the real question is, what's your value proposition? I can throw away membership, status of membership, and then still, constituents doesn't get any value out of it. Guys, we have a lot of time right now. There's a lot of time to really rethink our next value proposition. Things are not rosy in the next 3 months, and it's not gonna be rosy in the next 6 months. I highly encourage our team actually and the profession and industry to really plan forward, not only for the next 3 months, but to plan for 6, 12, 24 months. How is it going to actually really look like? What is the new value proposition that we actually can offer the constituents of our membership base? And if we cannot produce that, then we fail. But then, sitting in the house for like the whole day, creates a lot of mental anxiety also. Haven't you felt that? It's quite very different to stay the whole week and month staying at your own confines of your homes right now. We need to re-energize and call for volunteers to really do surveys. We're doing it a lot right now. We're really doing face-to-face interaction over the online and say, what do you really think we need to be providing you? So surveys are going to be very important to be done right now, and to redefine and to work closely. We have bills to pay. We're looking at non-cash exchange right now with our partners. What do I mean by non-cash? It's like cash is king, but there are several areas that you can work with your partners on a non-cash basis to create joint value proposition to the market. And we're really exploiting that at the moment right now. So we have a lot of time in our watches right now. There's a lot of work to be done, but it's really activating and empowering our existing staff, supporters, and members to really redefine the new value propositions that associations should be able to create going forward.
Absolutely. And actually to follow on to that, Charlie, as you look at the organizations that are a part of PCCAE, free memberships, some organizations are not even collecting their membership fees. They say they have a membership due, but they don't really chase down people. They don't really go after it. It's like, yeah, we're going to go collect that sponsorship dollar, and we're going to worry about that without worrying about the membership value that we're providing to customers or members. They're obviously the same thing. You need to obviously be very much related. As you think about that for your organization, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to people as you look at the value proposition for that membership to start charging more money, what would that be?
You know what we're doing right now? we're doing a lot of effort and really putting the platform in place for what I call shared services function. Associations will depend more on association services providers. You need to consolidate. You need to leverage your position, and you need to get the best practice where it actually exists. So right now, are we working as an association, or we're really looking at redefining our new value proposition? Maybe the value proposition that we can actually create is really putting in place a shared services function and really expand it so that associations can really leverage. Because as you know, associations doesn't have the resources, they don't have the money, they don't have the scalability and the expertise to really run it for the new generation of things that is actually needed. So that's where we're actually focusing right now. And it will require a lot of partnering.
An interesting business model that we saw, and actually this partly goes to one of the questions that we have as well, which is the mix between webinars and actually in-person events, and what's that going to look like going forward. Obviously, every organization is going to be a little bit different, but one of the ones that we saw recently was actually, more or less, if you're a member and you're a paying member, you're active member, you can get on your webinars for free. It's part of included with your membership. It doesn't cost so much, so it's not a huge burden to the organization. But if you're not a member, you don't get on those for free. You got to pay for it, and that's part of what you need to pay to the organization. Therefore, that value, that revenue gets transferred over to the membership side, and now you can start to see the reoccurring revenue coming through. Marcel, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, this structure is very important, and it's hard to say. As an association management company, we see this as an opportunity time because, as you say, we have shared resources, we have all this in place, and we're a very strong organization, and our business unit compared to the events unit is doing very well compared to the others, and this is for us now an opportunity to also make it clear to associations saying, look, there are, if you need to restructure, look at outsourcing it. As you say, shared services is one of them. In order to look at your continuity, you have to look outside of the box. The old model doesn't work anymore. I'm not saying that AMCs are the solutions, but it's one of them that is there.
And actually, interestingly enough, and on that point, Marcel, I was actually going through the data, what happened, during the last few recessions in the United States, where, associations really had to look at their, their revenue and be realistic about it. And actually that each of those times, both during the financial crisis in 2008, going back to the dot-com bust, there was a huge transition to AMCs during both of those periods, because people had to shed costs and find better ways to drive value to their members. So again, are we going to see that again? Obviously Asia, this is a new concept, so it's a very foreign sort of thing, but again, it is something that people should be looking at and being realistic with their boards about what is possible.
Yeah, thanks for the plug.
No, but it is. We were doing a research on this just to understand what happened if you go back. Because, again, even though, obviously we're a technology platform, we have to understand what's happening in the market. And if you go back and you look at the economic data and the projections from Goldman Sachs, you look at the Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, here in the US, I mean, they're projecting a negative GDP growth of minus 24%. That's a huge number as we start to look at unemployment and minus, negative growth. That's a massive hit to any organization. So this is just the reality that we're living in. So how do organizations, really take a look at what they're doing and try to move forward? Antonio, for you, as you look at that mix, and I'll go back to this mix between webinars and in-person events. Once we get back to whatever this normal may be, how do you see that mix actually playing in part to really make sure organizations are succeeding?
Well, I think it will have to be a very solid mix of those, that combination of the face-to-face and virtual. I think and I hope that the industry doesn't go back to what it was before with an overwhelmed offer on face-to-face events, that a more hybrid approach occurs, meaning a better combination of the face-to-face engagement with the digital. They can be definitely combined. Actually, this is something that we've been doing in the region, and I'm happy to say that Marcel has been part of that, of providing that digital pre-face-to-face experience, and that has been quite successful in that sense. But in addition to that, I think it's very, going back to what Charlie mentioned, is what is number one, what is the audience that you want to feel close. Number two, what is the real value proposition? I think diversification it's key. Outsourcing definitely will need to happen. So it's going to be a combination of several aspects, from the education, face-to-face or digital, from the way you engage, from your value proposition. If it's education, it needs to be education, but what sort of caliber of audience you want to target in order to achieve your goals. For me, it's something very clear, which is how we can measure short term every single step that we provide. But definitely digital, it is here to stay, but on a hybrid mix together with face-to-face. There is, tons of tech platforms nowadays available, I think more than ever, and some of them are offering different features than others. But I think the key, as I mentioned before, is that tech platform is just the enabler. We've been always saying that technology is just the enabler, but what's going to be your strategy and your virtual design experience?
Absolutely. So I think this is a good time to transition. We have a few minutes left for Q&A. So I would recommend anybody who does have a question, just click the button at the bottom for Q&A, submit your question, and we will be able to ask some of the panelists. If you have one for a specific person, go ahead and put their name in there, and we will identify them. And before we do go to Q&A, I would like to go to our next poll, which is the future bright? So it should pop up on your screen now, and go ahead and select one of the answers. All right, so it looks like our poll numbers are in. The majority, 67%, answered it's okay, but slightly worried about the future for our organization. That obviously is on everybody's mind, and certainly the overwhelming majority answered that particular question. Let's go to, we have a few questions here. The first one is for Mr. George Lowe. What is, or any advice for the sports industry, especially those in the nonprofit organization? Who would like to take, anybody know about the sports industries?
If nobody comes up, I will volunteer. I did work for the Asia Fitness Convention. I'm one of the founders. That it's not an association, but it's the largest current trade show in Thailand, with close to 2,000 participants right now. So there's a little bit in there. The sports industry is different. The biggest question is, is the government going to help? And it's very different how the government going to help. And there's one thing I wanted to share. If the government helps you to retain jobs, it is good for the people that are working for them. It is hard for you to change your organization because it limits you to the fact that you have to retain your staff the way it is. So there's good and bad sides for it. If it helps the industry in order to fund the promotion and development, I would certainly look at it. And events and trade shows per se have been the parameters of industry developments. You've seen that if you carefully look at any industry that has been developed, the trade shows and the conventions came first to build the knowledge and the know-how and the buyers and sellers and came that forward. So I presume that a lot of the governments are taking the traditional vision of investing again in these sectors to boost the sectors that have been hurt. So that's what I would look out for. Sports per se is a difficult one. I would very much reach out to your stakeholders, get all the stakeholders together, the venues, the sponsors, the media, everybody who has an investment in sports, and get them around the table and find a consensus, build a budget and resources, and take it from there.
But it's time to rethink. I mean, I don't know which specific sport maybe our guest was speaking about, but you know, this is a call that depends which industry you were. Whatever wages or whatever were too high. It's, I mean, I'm talking from the experience of what I'm listening from my home country in Spain, where everybody's talking that, you know, maybe football was football as we understand football, soccer in the US, it's overrated, and the salaries that, you know, clubs and so on were paying were not realistic, and we know where the money comes from, and it's majority from TV and so on. But that is something that it's as again, if we go back to the beginning of rethinking if the world we used to live before this, was it the real one? Was it, you know, what percentage of a fake one was it? I think overall the world in general needs to distribute the value and the money that generates differently. Someone say, oh, I read, I can't remember where, that cannot be that some TV host or a top football player earns 100 more times or more than a frontliner who is saving lives nowadays. And we will go more into that personal and emotional part. But I think it's a definitely opportunity of rethinking and how money is distributed around the world, to be honest.
Well, everybody is appreciating the teachers right about now, with all the kids at home and parents having to teach them. I don't think anybody would debate that teacher salaries should be raised at this point. Let's go on to, so there's another question, and I guess this is digging into history a little bit. I did mention 2008 and what happened. The answer, what I had mentioned that was that a lot of associations were shedding costs and decided to move their organizations to association management companies to take on from a professional side and reduce costs. But I will actually leave that to open up to you guys as well. If we go back to the previous recessions, what did associations do and how did they react in those times? Anybody? Charlie?
I think Charlie wants to go first, but you're on mute, Charlie.
There we go, Charlie.
Okay. I started a few .com companies during that 2000 early years. We learned our mistakes during that time. We were actually selling dividends or promises that wasn't really backed up with a solid value proposition that we could actually deliver. This is the same thing that's going to happen today. You know, we need to look at as to what really is our value proposition. I could appreciate the results of the poll that you just did right now, Eric, wherein a lot of the association, probably members here or executives, are quite worried about their associations for their existence, for their lifeline. This is because, you know, we are in transition of the value proposition that we're trying to create. When I say 6, 12, 18, and 24 months, the thing that's going to determine our livelihood or our existence in association will be based on the balance sheet or the cash flow that we're actually holding for our associations. Once we bust that and we don't really address that, then we actually go empty pocket. So how do we actually address that? I have to address that again by following what we call sales and operations planning in the supply chain. What do I mean by that? The financial strength of any association is going to be based on the value proposition and the combination of products that you actually put to the market that customers are willing to pay for. So how do I suggest going forward? You really need to recalibrate the product portfolio and calculate the revenue and the expenses that you're going to support and make sure that it actually supports the financial direction of your association. So going for 9, 12, 18, and 24, you can actually only do one thing. You need to make sure that you have the right product portfolio and you have to plan for the worst case scenario. Because in supply chain of associations, you need to actually simulate what's going to be when membership doesn't work anymore. What's going to be when competition does this and we become irrelevant. So all of these things are inputs towards analyzing the trend and creating the new norm wherein our associations are going to operate into. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Charlie. Marcel, you want to dig into history a little bit?
No, I actually want to move ahead. I don't think, forward. And the thing I'm just reading the questions that are being there, and a lot of them are very similar. If you've heard me speak, and even I've spoken with Eric a few times at these events, I always say our competition for associations that we have to look out for are the online communities. And one of the questions is, how are the associations going to look like? And I think we have to look at it wider. I think that part of the association will plainly disappear, and part of it will be absorbed by online communities that already have a close relationship, that have different dynamics, but that are funded not on a membership model, but are funded on the model of matching business and creating that. As you see, that is all the way from LinkedIn, which is one. LinkedIn tomorrow can take over 90% of all the associations if they want to, if they have that mindset and capacity. It won't take them that long. And at this moment, their opportunity is wide open. So I think we need to take care of it. And that's also the mindset we should take to move forward. All the questions is, what are you going to do? And then see where you fit into that space.
Yeah, let's actually tackle this one. I think this is a good one. Any advice to the association management executives on how to be more motivated and productive amidst the crisis? I see Antonio has taken himself off mute and wants to jump in. So,
well, because I mean, previous interventions from Charlie and Marcel and I felt like sharing something more on the personal side and being an optimistic by birth. I can share many examples, but it is definitely telecommuting or working from home. Some of us not, and you have to accept that. I think more than ever, we live in a world that is, like it or not, how do you want to manage your daily time? Advice or any thoughts on how to stay more productive and motivated at this time is, for me, is clear. Set up your routine or your daily routine as if you were going to the office on daily basis. Have your own working team colleagues that they have in their calendar, because I've seen it. Get out and get some sunlight, and that have twice a day. Don't be overwhelmed by the amount of news, fakes, or valid that we are exposed nowadays. Put aside for a certain amount of time your WhatsApp. It has become, or any other instant messaging platform, they have become definitely a new communication channel, but I don't know if it's something that's shared within today's panelists, but the fact that I'm based here in Singapore, but my family, relatives are based in a country with the highest crisis ever, Spain in this case, I'm overwhelmed with the amount of articles, memes, videos on WhatsApp that is really difficult to get your site out of it. Connect with your teams on regular basis, have your weekly touch points, start every single of those calls with a personal approach, asking them how are they doing, how are they feeling, how is the relative, anybody involved, any challenges, share some very good episode of the past day that you've been going through, and embrace and build your resilience. My good friend Marcel and Charlie might add something. I know Marcel also exercises quite heavily, and it really helps to get yourself motivated and positive, which I think it's key. I think the mentality we have been mentioning during this forum today, how relevant is to have not only the right talent but also the right mentality. Before I joined PCMA a while ago, I used to join for an organization that used to say one rotten apple in a basket of healthy apples will rotten the whole basket, and that is something that we as leaders, we need to make sure that we embrace and we share that positivism and good manners.
One thing just to share quickly, making sure communications is active in your association is very important. And I like what Antonio really said on that particular area. But make sure that you really have already presented. At this point in time, you must have presented already a new strategy for your association. If you haven't presented one, so you're actually laid back because you're not actually proactively addressing the needs of your association. In our association, we show them the numbers. And the employees have actually volunteered to get a no salary, all volunteer, until we are actually able to actually get into a stabilization point. This is 80 people of men and women who have actually 100% volunteered. Every day they work and they provide inputs as what's going on. On every Friday, we devote Friday morning as a prayer time for all of us. Why do we have prayer time? You know, we thought that all the while we should actually share the same values. And there's a lot of things that has to be prayed for also. We're not being so religious here, but we're not seeing a trend of positiveness. And if there's no trend of positiveness, we can just work so hard and hope and pray things will actually be better on a regular, tempo or cadence. So it's really being transparent, and then you're able to rally the employees to really give. So we prioritize. We're not saying we're not going to spend the money, but those who need food, those who need medicines are way above the priorities of what you're going to provide to your employees. So you just have to really make sure that everything is out in the open and you're actually transparent to what you can actually provide and not be able to provide, and what's the direction going forward.
Marcel, anything you'd like to add to that?
Two things. First of all, guys, any crisis is an opportunity, and so do that. Take a list of where you always wanted to move the industry to, or your association to, or your team to. Now is the chance to do that. There's no other excuse for it. That's one thing. And secondly, internally, it is very hard. I think, both Charlie and Antonio said it very well. It's very difficult to be motivated in this time of day. Give people the opportunity, work-life balance, be online enough. Make sure to move to video conferencing. I mean, the fact that we're looking at each other makes it so much better. If I would just look at a screen today, I wouldn't have felt right. So this is what we now require all our conferences to be on video, so we can see body language, and also show people the roadmap, show people what is coming next, what are you working on. They need to be motivated because they want to see where the future is. We don't know how to do it, but you know where you want to go. So that is important to share with the entire team.
Absolutely. And just, I would say one of those points that came up, making sure the internal communication is clear. There's a book I would definitely recommend to folks based on John D. Rockefeller, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits by Verne Harnish. Does talk about meeting cadence and really how to make sure things are happening and communication is going on a regular basis. Definitely check it out. It's an easy read. There's a lot of content in there. You will not implement everything within a couple months, but it's how do you manage your organization and how do you get things moving in the right direction. Coming out of a crisis, as been mentioned, is absolutely an opportunity. And for everybody, who is here and looking at their organizations, there are opportunities all over the place. It's just a matter of what is right for your organization and what are those next steps to come out of it in a positive manner. Whether that's moving to a more paid membership model, whether that's taking events that were previously offline into an online sphere, or completely just moving to education and really trying to make sure the professionals are actually getting value for what it is that the organization's mission is all about. And then that's the last point I'll leave with is going back to the mission of the organization. If you're not thinking about what is the mission and how are we delivering that value based on what we're supposed to be doing based on our charter, then how are you going to move forward? So we'll leave it with that today. Thank you to Antonio, Charlie, and Marcel. Appreciate all of you joining us, and we look forward to having you back soon. And everybody who's on, please reach out if you need anything. And EventBank is also here to support as much as we can anybody who needs help. So have a great afternoon, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you, everybody.